Hi, I'm Father Joseph Mary, and welcome back to A Simple Word, where we reflect on the gospel for the coming Sunday. In John Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan is portrayed as a great angel who's forever rejected God, because he says it's better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Today, in this gospel, Jesus shows us that we think it's better too to reign than to serve. In Sunday's gospel, the disciples are still in shock. The words of Jesus from last Sunday's gospel are still haunting their every waking moment. For a brief second, there had been incredible joy. Jesus had acknowledged he was the Messiah of God. He was the one who would destroy the enemies of Israel, who would establish a kingdom where they would reign with him in power. They could almost taste it. But before the disciples could begin to enjoy these thoughts, Jesus had said the unthinkable. The Messiah, the Christ, he's not who you think. He'll be arrested. He'll be crucified. He'll die. They couldn't believe it. It was the worst possible outcome. Peter was furious. He tried to challenge Jesus. He rebukes him. He tries to make Jesus change his mind. And Jesus says to him, "Get behind me, Satan. You're thinking as men think, not as God thinks." Now the disciples have left the city of Caesarea Philippi. They're passing through Galilee and walking towards Jerusalem. The cross is waiting for the Christ. But as they're walking, the disciples begin arguing among themselves. And Jesus hears, but he doesn't stop them. Instead, he reminds them of what he told them before. I will be arrested. I will suffer. I will die. When they arrive at their destination, Jesus finally turns to them and he asks them, "What were you arguing about along the way?" Silence. The disciples are ashamed. They don't want Jesus to see what's in their hearts, but Jesus sees. Reminds us of Adam and Eve hiding from God in the garden. When he called them, they remained silent. They didn't want God to see what they'd done. What were the disciples arguing about? Power. They were arguing about who among them was the greatest. They were arguing about which of them would sit at the right and the left of Jesus when he arrived at Jerusalem and destroyed the Romans. But even while they were arguing, Jesus had reminded them he was not going to Jerusalem to conquer, not in the way they thought of victory. He was going to suffer and to die. Yet they didn't understand and they were afraid to ask him any questions. They still couldn't believe it. They refused to believe. They didn't ask him any questions because they were afraid of the answers. This was not what they signed up for. Try to imagine what they felt. These men had left everything to follow him. Friends, family, their livelihood, everything they ever knew. Safety and security. They dared to hope that Jesus was the Messiah. The one who would set their people free, who would destroy their enemies and establish a powerful, united kingdom. And they were his followers. They would reign with him. They would share his power. Now Jesus has to show them the truth. And so he takes a little child in the crowd and he lifts him up to his breast and he tells them that if they truly want to be his followers, if they truly want to share in his kingdom, they must become weak. They must serve. And the disciples are shocked. As far as the law was concerned, a child in ancient Israel was almost worthless. A child had no rights. Children were a drain on the family's resources. Children were to be seen and not heard. They were truly the least important people of all. And today Jesus tells his disciples, if you want to follow me, if you want to be my disciple, you must become a servant to this child. You must become a servant to the very least of all. Today the Lord speaks this word to our hearts, to our lives, to our circumstances. And he asks us, do you want to be my disciple? Then stop arguing about who's the greatest. And brothers and sisters, we do this all the time in the most subtle ways. We may not be as obvious as the disciples, but we're constantly judging and condemning people in our hearts. We make ourselves greater. We put ourselves on a pedestal. We see the evil in the others so easily, but never in ourselves. But today, Jesus speaks to our sin and our pride. Do you want to be my disciple? Stop Stop putting yourself in the first place. Stop serving yourself. Stop counting your worth by what you own, the clothes you wear, the car you drive, the job you have. Stop putting yourself above everyone else. Stop using people for your own benefit. Do you want to be my disciple? Then do what I do. Die. Die to yourself. Die to your pride. Die to your self-righteousness. And become a servant to those around you. Put them in the first place for love of me. Because when you serve them, it's really me that you serve. When you love them, it's truly me that you love. St. Teresa of Calcutta dedicated her entire life to serving God in the poorest of the poor. And she once said, there's a terrible hunger for love. We all experience that in our lives. The pain, the loneliness. We must have the courage to recognize it. The poor you may have right in your own family. Find them. Love them. We don't need to go to India to serve the poor. The poor are right here. In our families, in our communities, in our schools. Serve them. Love them. Bring Jesus Christ to them. Nothing else you do in your life will be more important. I'm Father Joseph Marian. Thanks for listening to A Simple Word. If you found this reflection helpful, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.